Okay, so you just watched the quick little review clip on the Big Bad Wolf. Okay, everybody knows that story, I get that, but it was important for us to review it quickly so that you're able to fill this out. I want to complete this together. Yours might look slightly different, but you'll still be able to fill out your plot triangle. Might look a little different from this, but I want to work on this together, okay? So you're going to copy and write down what I have. If that means you need to pause the video, go for it. Let's start backwards. I've told you, that sometimes I do like to approach things a little differently. On the plot triangles, I hate starting at the beginning because then if I start at the beginning, as I make my way around the triangle, I find that I get to here and I still have a bunch left in the story that I haven't gotten to, and it drives me crazy because I don't have enough room. So when I approach this strategically, on the plot triangle that is, I really like to do certain things first. This is the first thing I do. I find the climax of the story because honestly, if you think about it, it divides my story in half, okay? So if I find the climax first, it's very easy in my mind. I know what belongs on this side of the triangle, and then I know the other half of my story that belongs on this side of the triangle. So finding the climax first, in my opinion, is the way to do this. So in the box on your climax, on your plot triangle, it's really important that remember that the climax is not necessarily the moment when the most exciting thing happens in the story. I think you probably have had teachers tell you in the past that it's always, the most exciting part in the story. Somebody dies or somebody escapes. That is not true. That is not true. The climax is when the reader gets an idea as to how the conflict is going to be resolved. So if I'm reading a story and I have this moment, and we all do it, you just probably don't even realize you do it consciously. You all do it. At some particular moment, you think to yourself, oh, wow, I know how this story is going to end. But believe it or not, at that very moment, when you, as the reader, when you figured out how that story was going to end, that was the climax. Honestly, it's this. You're reading your story, you're going up the triangle, all these events are happening, and then bam, you, the reader, you're like, oh, I know how this is going to end. I know how the conflict is going to get resolved. That, my friends, is what goes inside the box. That is your climax. Because you are like, I figured it out. I know how the conflict is going to be resolved. I know how it's going to end. So then everything else that starts to happen in the story, all the other little different events that happen are leading you towards the ending that you guessed at that moment of the climax up here. Okay? All right. So if we think back to the little wolves, and they're all trying to escape, right? And this wolf wants to eat them. And they're all in trouble. That is the big conflict of our story. And I think everybody would agree that the three little pigs are trying to survive. So if I look at the climax, at what moment did I know those three little pigs were going to be okay? It's when he's climbing the wolf and he thinks he's going to go down the chimney. But the wolf, as a reader, I know that third pig put a pot of boiling water underneath the chimney. The wolf doesn't know that, but I know that. So when I see him climbing this is what you're writing down right now in the climax box. You're writing down that as soon as you see that wolf going down the chimney, that light bulb goes off as a reader. You have that aha moment and you realize what's going to happen. You know that the wolf is probably going to go into the boiling water, and that the three little pigs are going to end up being just fine. All right, so make sure if you need to pause the video to write that down, you do. Then, the second thing I like to do is I like to fill out the ending. The pigs were not harmed and they lived happily ever after. So make sure you write that in the resolution box. Again, if you need to pause the video at any time to get this stuff written down, that's fine. What we're building right now, using a very simple fairy tale from a long time ago when you were a child, we're using a simple story to teach a more complex skill. So you're going to have this plot triangle as your model. This is going to be your perfect example. So as we move forward with harder pieces of literature, you'll be able to always come back to a perfect model that was done for you. The protagonist and the antagonist, that's pretty easy if you want to take a second and fill that out, like I have here. Go ahead and copy that down as well. And then I think at this point we can start to move over and start to fill out the beginning. All right, I've divided my story in half. I know that everything on this side is going to be before he goes down the chimney, right? See how I did that? That's a strategic move, thinking about dividing the story in half. Everything that happens on this side is going to be after he goes down the chimney. So now I'm not going to have any parts of my story left out. I've divided it up strategically by splitting the story in half. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Setting, I have a neighborhood, 3 houses. So go ahead and take a second and write that down. It's, they're in the woods. Maybe you wrote something like that, a little town, that's fine. The characters, you have the 3 little children, and definitely make sure you have this. The 3 little pigs, the 3 children, the 3 pigs, and then you have the big bad wolf. All right, we need to at least have the 3 little pigs and the wolf written down for characters. Now, here, it's clearly divided into 3 sections. All right, so I see that the rising action has to be divided into 3 different parts. In my mind, I have 3 little pigs, so I instantly divided my rising action into the 3 little pigs, into the 3 little parts. So the first part, again, if I go too fast, you're going to have to pause and copy this down. But the first part is the first pig's house of straw. It's destroyed by the wolf, so he runs to his brother's house. All right, so you want to pause the video and maybe get that written down. Second, the pig's house of sticks is also destroyed by the wolf. So he and his brother, the 2 other little pigs remaining, they run to their 3rd brother's house, right here, their 3rd brother's house. Then the 3rd pig builds a house of bricks, but the wolf can't destroy it. So take a second and pause the video and get how I divided my rising action into 3 simple parts before I get to the climax. So pause the video here and get that written down. All right, you've unpaused, and now we're going to move over to the falling action. The falling action on your plot triangle might be divided into 2 different sections, but you can see that I have 2 parts. So this would be number 1, that the wolf burned himself. Okay, number 2, he ran away. And then you get to the ending of the story. So pause your plot triangle and get that written down as well. All right, so we've gone through and we have made, let's take a step back here, we have made a perfect plot triangle. You won't have to do this on most of them, but if you want to copy it down, you can. Just take the time to do it right, and it will pay off in the end. So it is a good theme. Why don't you go ahead and just copy that down just to be safe. But for the most part, this is how you will do a plot triangle. I guess if you take away anything from today's lesson, it's the strategic idea of splitting your story in half by identifying the climax first, then doing the resolution, doing the exposition. You then have your story all plotted out. Then go back in and complete the rising action and the falling action last. Okay? But always do your climax first, resolution second, exposition third. That is a strategic move to filling out a plot triangle so that you don't have parts of your story skipped, left out, or maybe you ran out of room. All right, now that we have a perfect model, it's time for you to practice this by yourself. If you go to my webpage, you're going to see an area where you click here to watch the cute little cartoon. It's an animated film called Jerry's Game. You're going to watch that short film. It's really short. And then you're going to attempt to fill out a plot triangle all by yourself. Please keep the 3 little pigs out and use it as a model.